program continues on air, Frida. My name is Mikhail Baranov, and I'll tell you about the 5 most important news stories at this hour. Hello. Overnight into Friday, Russia carried out another massive bombardment of peaceful Ukrainian cities, launching 32 missiles and 465 drones of various types. Ukrainian air defenders neutralized 405 drones, 9 cruise missiles, as well as 4 ballistic missiles, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. One guided Kh-51 air-launched missile was also destroyed. 29 and 1 aeroballistic missile of the Kinzel type. There were hits at 19 locations, and at several others, debris from downed aerial targets fell. Critical infrastructure was attacked in 8 regions of Ukraine, and stores and residential buildings were damaged. In Zaporizhzhia, a 7-year-old boy was killed, and 7 more people were injured. In the Chernihiv region, 10 people were injured. In Dnipropetrovsk and 5 other regions, there were power outages, and here's how the consequences are being dealt with, according to reports from our correspondents.
The massive shelling of Zaporizhzhia began around 1 o'clock in the morning. The Russians attacked the city in several waves. First, for about an hour, the city was hit by Shahid drones, and around 4 in the morning, 5 guided aerial bombs and 5 cruise missiles were dropped. 12 apartment buildings and 8 private homes were damaged. One of the drones crashed into a private house where a large family lived, parents and 3 children. The father and son were trapped under the rubble. 7-year-old Makar was pinned down by a large amount of debris.
We cleared the rubble because his room was at the very end. It just happened to be right above him.
We cleared away the debris. His room was at the edge. His bed was still there, actually. They pulled him out from under it.
They couldn't save the boy. He died in the hospital. His father is in critical condition in intensive care. He is a soldier, defended Mariupol, and took part in the defense of Azovstal. He was in captivity and only recently returned home.
This is the homeland of martial law.
This is the family of a prisoner of war. He returned from captivity in March. He was there for almost 3 years.
The family only bought a house in Zaporizhzhia this spring. On the night of October 10th, it was destroyed by a Russian attack. Critical infrastructure facilities in Zaporizhzhia were also attacked. Around midnight, attack drones began targeting Dnipro. Energy facilities were hit. One of the Russian drones crashed near a 9-story building and damaged a car. People were only saved because the UAV didn't detonate. The car
was parked nearby, by the curb. And Kevin knew that was precision work.
The car was parked. The Shahid was right by the curb. They say it was precision work, but it was still really scary. Last night was very loud. From 11:30 at night until 5 in the morning, non-stop. Our guys really did a great job.
Russian forces attacked several settlements in the Dnipropetrovsk region overnight. In Dnipro, Kamiansk, and Kryvyi Rih, the energy infrastructure was damaged. In Kryvyi Rih, a private business, apartment buildings, kindergartens, and schools were also damaged.
And the house was shaking like this, and everything was cracking.
Were there a lot of explosions?
A lot. Even 15 to 20, both loud and small ones.
It was so loud, I thought the doors would fly off. I jumped up at 5 a.m. to check if the doors were still in place. It went on almost the whole night. There were 12 explosions, and the last one was at 2 a.m. and then more explosions, and then again at 5 a.m.
Over the course of the night, Russians launched massive attacks on 8 regions from the capital of Ukraine. In the Chernihiv region, 10 people were injured as a result of the heavy shelling. Among them was a child. 7 apartment buildings and 1 house were damaged. Rescuers unblocked apartments where 6 people were trapped and dismantled hazardous structures. In the Poltava region, missile debris damaged about a dozen private homes, but there were no casualties. Right now, people are receiving building materials for repairs. Law enforcement agencies are working at the scene. In Kremenchuk and neighboring communities, there have been partial power outages. Points of invincibility are operating, where anyone can warm up, charge their phones, and get assistance. Natalia Husak, Oleg Predikin, Boris Kavenko, and Volodymyr Stenjlov for Freedom TV channel.
Chernihiv region also came under attack. Russia attacked the region with drones. In the Nizhyn district, railway infrastructure was damaged and a Ukrzaliznytsia employee was injured. The invaders also targeted an energy facility. The region implemented rolling blackouts and experienced problems with electricity supply. The consequences of the Russian attack are also felt in several other regions: Kharkiv, Donetsk, Sumy, and Odessa. 12 people were injured as a result of the shelling of Kyiv last night. Russia launched attack drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles at the Ukrainian capital. As a result of the attack, the left bank of Kyiv was left without electricity. There were also disruptions in the water supply. An apartment building was damaged in the Petrsk district. Fires broke out in several apartments. Our correspondent Victoria Chasiakina visited the scene.
On the night of October 10th, Russia once again launched a massive attack on Kyiv with drones and missiles. Around 2 in the morning, Larissa Mertza heard a loud explosion. The woman was sleeping at home and had no idea that this time, her own building would become a target for the Russian army.
Naturally, I pulled myself together in 2 seconds and went outside. At that moment, there were countless people here, residents of our building, who were panicking, stressed, and in shock. From 2 o'clock on, I saw emergency services, the Ministry of Emergency Situations, the police, and ambulances. Everything was organized.
The fire spread across 4 floors. The residents of the building suffered from smoke inhalation and shrapnel wounds.
The most severe destruction is on the Meknovsky side. There were fires there, and it even got to the point where the metal doors were blocked and people couldn't get out. I know one of the neighbors. He and his wife ended up climbing over the air conditioner to their neighbor's place. It was terrifying.
Rescuers evacuated 20 people. Among them was Galina Titiyunik. At 89 years old, the woman never imagined she would have to live through a war. The windows in her apartment were blown out.
One room faces this way. The kitchen and another room face that way. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. Yesterday, just my luck, I had cleaned everything up, scrubbed the place spotless. I opened the kitchen door. I heard a crash. I was sure it wasn't in my place, and not even in our building.
According to police, 10 people from the 17-story building in the Petrsk district are in the hospital. Law enforcement officers are conducting a criminal investigation at the scene. The main theory is that drone fragments directly hit the building.
About 50 police officers have been involved. Forensic experts, field officers, and investigators from the BIPOL unit were assembled. They were sent for examination. Overall, apartments from the 6th to the 8th floors in the building were damaged.
Other districts in Kyiv were also affected. In the Podol and Desnyansky districts, debris from aerial targets fell on open ground. There were no significant damages there.
In the Holosyskia district, the facade and windows on the 5th floor of a 10-story building were damaged. Cars in the courtyard were also on fire. In the Desnyansky district, according to preliminary information, debris from a downed missile fell on open ground near a clinic. In the Podol district, debris fell on open ground. Vitaly Klitschko, the mayor of Kyiv, on Telegram. In
Ukraine's Ministry of Energy noted that the main target of today's strike was the energy infrastructure. As a result of the Russian attack, the left bank of the capital and part of the right bank were left without electricity. There were also disruptions in water supply. Services are continuing to work to restore vital infrastructure as quickly as possible. Victoria Chastyukin, Alexandra Khan, for Freedom TV channel.
The head of the Ukrainian state called on the international community to respond decisively to Russia's terror and to restore global security.
It is precisely the civilian energy infrastructure that is the main target of the Russians ahead of the heating season. Together, we can protect people from this terror. We need more than empty words. Decisive action is required from the US, Europe, and the G7, both in delivering air defense systems and in imposing sanctions. We are counting on a response to this brutality from the G20 and from all those who speak of peace in their statements but refrain from taking real action. The world can defend itself against these crimes, and doing so will certainly ensure global security. Thank you to everyone who is helping. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Against the backdrop of targeted Russian strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, the European Commission stated that the EU has the capacity to support Ukraine during the winter period. They also emphasized that Russian strikes are damaging not only the energy sector, but that the Russian army is also destroying civilian infrastructure, including hospitals and schools.
We strongly condemn these strikes. Unfortunately, this has been happening since the beginning of the war. Russia is deliberately attacking Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and this is absolutely unacceptable. The European Union is maintaining contact with Ukrainian authorities as well as representatives of the Group of Seven, and will continue to support Ukraine both in terms of infrastructure restoration and providing winter assistance, just as it did last year. We have additional capacity.
Operators of strike drones from the Special Operations Center of the Armed Forces of Ukraine targeted locations where Russian equipment and personnel were stationed in temporarily occupied territories. According to the Security Service of Ukraine, the spectacular nighttime fireworks were provided by FP2 drones equipped with a 105-kilogram warhead. The security service has emphasized that they continue to destroy Russian occupiers by all available means. On the front line, Ukrainian defense forces eliminated 1,120 Russian servicemen in a single day. As a result, the total losses of the Russian army have exceeded 1,120,000 personnel. In addition, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, 5 Russian tanks, 14 armored combat vehicles, 13 artillery systems, and 70 units of automotive equipment were also destroyed. 245 combat engagements were recorded on the front line over the past day. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that Ukrainian soldiers continue to steadfastly hold their positions, repelling Russian attacks. In particular, 23 enemy attacks were repelled at the Konstantinivka bridgehead, 30 at the southern Slobozansk sector, and another 44 at the Oleksandrivka section of the front. The Pokrovsk direction remains the most tense. There, the defense forces stopped 72 attempts at assault actions by Russian occupiers. Military experts note the successes of the Ukrainian armed forces north of Pokrovsk.
The defense forces were really able to break through, push back, and isolate large groups of Russians who, in general, once isolated, don't put up much resistance. They're waiting for drones to drop them food, supplies, and ammunition, but they're not trying to carry out any active offensive actions. And all of this, of course, affects the situation north of Pokrovsk, because the main goal of the Russians is to encircle Pokrovsk from the north in order to launch a further assault on the city. That goal remains unachieved. And as long as all these forces are tied up in the meat grinder around the Dobropilya salient, the enemy has very little chance of encircling Pokrovsk.
And now, let's return to the main topic of the day. Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs commented on Russia's massive attack. The head of the department, Andriy Sybiha, emphasized that the Russian Federation launched a massive strike on the anniversary of the first attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure in 2022. According to the foreign minister, this is a deliberate demonstration that Putin has no intention of changing his strategy of terror.
Russia is worse than Hamas. Even Hamas agreed to a ceasefire in peace efforts. On the contrary, Moscow continues the senseless war it started. A war it cannot win and will not win. Depriving people of energy as autumn temperatures drop is tantamount to genocide. Pressure on Moscow is the only remedy that can work, but it must be strong and unified. Andriy Sybiha, Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, on the social network X.
Russian strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure are a war crime that cannot be forgiven. This is the opinion of Ukraine's ambassador to the European Union, Katerina Mavernova. She condemned Russia's massive overnight attack, which, as a reminder, killed a 7-year-old child in Zaporizhzhia. The EU ambassador also shared on social media that she was forced to spend the night in the bathroom. This was because Kyiv was under a heavy barrage of ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as drones. The main target of the Russian army was the Kyiv thermal power plant.
In their recent massive attacks on Ukraine, the Russians have focused on Ukraine's energy facilities. They are trying to cut people off from heating, electricity, and water before winter. The war in Ukraine continues every day. Civilians are dying, children are dying. These are Russia's war crimes, which cannot be forgiven. I believe the day will come when they will pay for this. Katerina Mladenova, EU Ambassador to Ukraine, Facebook.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.